That's basically it. Is I'm on a high fat
diet. You had to eat it for a family of 4 every night.
Yeah, basically. Anything I would eat.
The information in the podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please talk to a medical professional before doing anything that may impact your health. Hello, welcome to my podcast, to Mics One JoeySooch. I am JoeySooch. I'll be giving a mic to Anna Laurent or Lauren.
All of the above.
Okay. She is a Head Start social worker who provides trauma-informed counseling support and educational programs for low-income, traditional, and foster families. While she loves to help others, she is also dealing with Alagile Syndrome, which is not having enough ducts to remove the bile in her liver, which can lead to liver damage. She's also super itchy because of the Alagile Syndrome. She also the head of programs and initiatives at Our Odyssey. Our Odyssey is a gathering place for chronic illnesses and rare diseases. Also had the cookbook. She would nominate it Best Kept Secret. But if you were in a room with her or know of her, she is definitely not a seeker and well known in the rare disease community. Thank you for letting me slide into your DMs. How are you?
Anytime. It was a great introduction. You did your research.
Yeah, I gotta pretend I'm professional, you know?
I'm a pro at pretending I'm professional. 10 out of 10.
But I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I know you're a busy person with everything going on in your life.
A little bit. It's a little nonstop, but yeah, no, I always try to make time for stuff like this. I think it's so important. Yeah.
So first things I want to know is, what's your favorite farm animal?
Favorite farm animal? Oh, wow. Probably goats. I think they're super cute. And
like Tom Brady?
No, like the farm animal goats. I think they're very cute. Yeah.
Potato.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah, for the audience, it's seemingly a random question, but of course it is. But she grew up in a farm in Kentucky, so it's super relevant to this.
That's why I had an answer. But it did catch me off guard because no one's ever asked me that.
Well, now it's ghosts. So there you go. All right, so let's talk about Alagile Syndrome. How is your life different with it?
Yeah. So Alagile Syndrome is a rare disease. It affects roughly 1 in 35 to 70,000. That varies so much because of diagnosis, which, if you're in the rare disease community, you know how that goes. So for me, it's my liver and kidneys that are mostly affected. And there's no cure, there's no treatments. But day to day, it's that chronic itch that you mentioned earlier. I am always itchy from head to toe all the time. And so, yeah, honestly, it's like any chronic condition where I think I'm more tired at the end of the day because of it. And I experience a lot of fatigue and brain fog and things like that. And I try to control my itch during the day, like when I'm at work and like in public. And so at the end of the day, like I'm just exhausted from like not itching in front of people.
Do you ignore itching? Like, how do you just scratch it and it goes away, or is it?
Oh, no, it never goes away. That's the super fun part about it. It never goes away. So it's funny. I am always itching, but people, like, even at work, don't really notice it because I've gotten really good at like not making it obvious. So like in meetings, I'll be like just scratching my leg like under the table and like no one sees. Or just like a slight little scratch on my arm, things like that. People just don't really pay attention to it. So it's not really ignoring it. It's more just, I don't know life without it. So I've just kind of learned to adapt,
Yeah. You were in a podcast with Annie on her podcast called Ours for a Rare Podcast. She's super amazing. I also interviewed her. She's a super awesome person. And you mentioned that if you could get rid of anything, it would be the itching.
Yes, for sure. That'd be great.
Like, do you have parts of your body that itch more, or they're like, let's say it gets warmer, itches more, or like clothes, or
Yeah, so heat makes it worse. So that's a huge thing. And then I mean, so areas of your body that really like hold heat. So, like right like the inside of my arms. If you look really closely, I do have some scarring there from when I was a kiddo and I used to itch there a whole lot. So yeah, so anywhere that holds heat. Um, but I would say it's like really my arms and legs, I would say are probably like the itchiest. But it's like all over, like all the time. It just depends on what my brain focuses on more in a moment.
is this something you like kind of forget if you're like doing something?
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah, like I don't itch around a lot of people. And so like my closest friends and like my family I do. And so it's funny because around them, like nowadays they see it before I do. Like I won't even notice that I'm scratching. And they'll be like, "Hey, like is it too hot in here? Are you good?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm just itchy." But yeah, I don't really notice it.
yeah, I mean, if it's someone scratching themselves, I would have never guessed unless it, unless I guess it's all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, a lot of people don't even realize that I have it or that it's like a thing. People honestly usually just think that I have like ADHD or something and I just can't sit still because that's kind of how it comes across is that I just don't stop moving,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is kind of nice that people just like don't know.
It does it. So I mentioned that it does affect your liver. Is there
Mhm.
like any food changes you have to do or anything in that regard, or just itching?
Yeah, so not for me. My particular case is pretty mild. Um, and so for me, it was mostly when I was younger that my diet had to be a certain way because I wasn't gaining weight, I wasn't maintaining weight, I was failure to thrive. I was even smaller than I am now. And so nowadays, I do have to eat more fats, so like more fatty foods, because otherwise it's digestively a nightmare. But yeah, for a lot of people with my condition, though, who have it more severely, they do have to be on more of a specialized diet. Um, and honestly, it just varies so much from like case to case.
Okay, that's interesting. That's what I hate about rare disease that affects even if you have the same disease, it affects everyone so differently.
Oh yeah, so differently. Um, and that's the thing is like there's some with my condition who they don't get diagnosed, like their case is so mild, they don't get diagnosed until they have a child, and their child is more severe, and they get diagnosed when they're like genetic, like doing genetic tests for their kiddo. But their kiddo is like super severe and like failure to thrive and like textbook Alagile syndrome. And then their parent is like super mild and just has like some of the facial features and that's it. Like it's so crazy how much it varies.
So how did you get diagnosed? Because I read that you have like facial differences. I think you have a different kind of body.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed. So when I was born, they had only identified one gene at the time that caused it, and I did not have that mutation. And so they had diagnosed me based on facial features and different characteristics. So a wide forehead. They have a term for our nose. I'm like, my cute little nose. We have butterfly shaped vertebrae. It doesn't affect anything, but that's part of it. We also have like an eye abnormality that doesn't affect our vision. My mom just has terrible vision, so I got that part genetically. Um, and then they also did like a liver biopsy, and so they found that I had less bile ducts than you're supposed to have, and so that's how I was diagnosed. But then later on, when I was in high school, around that time, they had identified a second gene that causes the condition. And so I guess I was in college when I got tested for that one. And I don't have that one either. So I'm
So
just
do you have
super
the
special.
disease or not?
So I definitely have it. There's quite a few, well, quite a few. I feel like saying quite a few in the rare space is an odd thing to say because there's not many of us, but there's quite a few of us within the Alagile syndrome community who don't have either gene and are diagnosed based on like the characteristics and stuff. It's very odd.
Oh my God, I don't know if that's like good news or like I guess bad news because there's still more research that needs to be done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just joke that I'm just extra special. That's my joke about it.
You're like the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So is there anything you are taking to like help at all, or is it you did get diagnosed and like deal with it for the rest
Yeah.
of your life?
So when I was diagnosed, basically, so it took my parents like, I don't know, I want to say 6 months, 4 to 6 months, which is, I mean, a very short span of time, honestly. And but it took them like 4 to 6 months, and I think it was 4 different hospitals in 3 different states. And by the time I got diagnosed, the doctor like looked at my parents and he was like, "So you already know more about her case than I do." And they were like, "All right." We don't know what to do with that. And so yeah, so honestly, I'm not on any medication right now. I was for a while, but a lot of it, I describe it as like band-aids. So it doesn't really like fix anything. It just kind of helps solve like one part of the problem, or it doesn't really solve it. It just like, hey, this might help. So I'm not on any medications right now. I kind of reached a point when I was in high school where like my liver stabilized and nothing was like getting worse basically. And my doctors were like, yeah, so at this point, we're just kind of monitoring to see like what happens next. And I was like, oh, okay, so do do we know what we're gonna do when something happens next? They're like, no, not really. And I was like,
Well, what could happen next?
yeah. So a lot of times, people with my condition will pass away from complications of the disease. But basically, like an organ or two will like begin to fail. That's kind of usually how it goes. But usually, so like for example, for me, my liver is the most affected, and so they are now watching my kidney. So I don't take like any medication basically at all, because it would go through my liver and break down my liver faster. Or if it went through my kidneys, they go break down my kidneys faster. But what usually happens is if you get an infection or in one of your liver or your kidneys, then usually most treatments have to go through one or the other. And so the more treatments you get, the more that organ starts to break down. And then eventually it's like there's not much they can do basically at some point because all medication goes through your liver or your kidneys. And so you can get a transplant. A lot of people with my condition who are more severe than I am get transplants. I'm not to the point like right now, I don't have a whole lot of health issues. So right now to get a transplant would actually put me on a lot of medication and cause me more health issues than I have right now. So it's kind of like a waiting game of like, when's the thing gonna happen? And what are we gonna do? Yeah.
So
A good
best
time.
of luck and best long, healthy life for you.
I mean, I plan on annoying people for quite some time. So, gotta stick around.
Okay, so I'm now curious. How did you go from being on a farm to like now you're like in the Zoom world and like advocating and social work?
Yeah. That's a really great question. Especially if we were to meet the rest of my family. A lot of my family is in agriculture, and does that kind of work. And so, yeah. So to be honest, I've never really been like like people in my family. A lot of my family members and my siblings were like played sports and that kind of stuff. And I couldn't play contact sports because of my condition. And so that kind of forced me to do things differently. So that kind of put me on the path to just kind of do what made me happy and figure out my own path. So really with advocacy, I feel like it's similar for all of us. We all are advocates, right? And it's just that we all start with ourselves and advocating for ourselves. And so that was the biggest part for me was my parents really empowered me in school to like they would do the meetings when I was younger, but I was there and like watch them talk about my condition and talk to teachers about what to do if if something were to happen. And then eventually it was like, okay, we're going to sit here and you're going to tell them. And so that really set me up to be an advocate, and to really find out how to read people and how to share about my condition. Because we all know that face you get when you start to tell someone about your disease and they're just like freaking out. Like you just like see it. And so I think that's what really started me on it, was just having to advocate for myself. And then I went to my first international symposium for my disease as an adult. So it was the summer between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college. And I grew up in a super small town, like super small town. Everyone knew that I had like something. And it was going to be this decision of...
Was that comforting for you, or?
Yes, I think yes. At the time, looking back, I think it's what I needed at the time, that I really didn't... I got to a certain point where I didn't like to say that I had a disease or anything. People just kind of like knew, like, oh, hey, Anna, PE is not going to play. Like Anna gets to sit on the sideline and like read a book. Or, like Anna can't go outside a whole lot in the heat. Like it was just kind of, people didn't know why, they just knew it was a thing. Which I think was good for me at the time, but it made going to college really intimidating, because I suddenly had this choice of whether or not I told people. And I had never really had that choice when it came to my peers. And to be honest, it was like terrifying. Like, and I at first was like, I'm not going to tell anyone. Like my condition is invisible. You can't see it. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm going to be as normal as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to this international symposium and I met a couple of other like young adults with my disease, and one in particular, Elena Hahn, who was the founder of the organization's daughter, and the whole reason the organization existed, because she has Alagile Syndrome. And I remember seeing her, and she was older than me, and she was like sarcastic and funny and just like herself, and like wasn't the disease. And I think that was the first time that I realized that I didn't have to be Alagile syndrome. Like it wasn't one or the other. Like it could coexist. And that was like so eye-opening for me. And that's really was my first step in getting involved in the Alagile syndrome community. So from there, when I was in college, Elena passed away super unexpectedly, like I think my sophomore year. And we were all grieving like around the world. And I had this moment where I was like, Elena would be so pissed at us. Like we're all like grieving separately when she like helped bring us together. What are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. And so I started a private Facebook support group just for young adults with Alagile syndrome, because that didn't exist. There was so much focus on pediatrics and so much focus on new diagnosis. And we didn't have a space to go and be like, hey, yeah, we survived childhood. It still sucks though. Like we didn't have a space to be honest about that, because we had parents wanting to hear stories of hope and wanting to know like, oh, they can live to that age, which is great. And I'm not taking away from that, but like we didn't have a space to go and grieve, right?
Is it common for people to die early?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So especially those who have it really severely, like infancy and childhood are the hardest time. So like, for example, my most like scary medical times was when I was an infant, because I wasn't growing. I wasn't maintaining any weight. There was really nothing that it was just really scary. I wasn't absorbing any vitamins. And so a lot of kiddos do end up passing away from the condition. And so when we live to this age of understandably so, a lot of parents look at us for support and for hope, which is great. But it puts this like weird pressure on, I feel like, young adults or those who are older for their rare disease to like only be happy or to only share the good things. And like, that's not reality, right? Like reality is I still have Alagile syndrome. It still affects my daily life. And it's really hard. And so I create that Facebook support group honestly for myself. Like I needed it. And it kind of just went from there. That was really my first step. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of been the whole thing, is that I'm things I do, which I'm glad they help other people, but it's kind of for me. Like it's because I need those things, right? Like I share my story because it has helped me so much to hear other people's stories. Um, yeah, so I kind of just, that's where I started. And then I don't really know how I got to the point where like I'm on podcast and stuff. I guess people want to hear from me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great person to interview and you're a great advocate. So it's like, it's, yeah, it's like you're a perfect person to interview.
Well, thanks.
I mean, it's also like a rare disease thing. Like when I look up guests, I don't specifically look for, oh, I need to find someone with this disease. You know, I kind of go based on like how comfortable they are, like how comfortable are they sharing their story, and like, will they be a good guest? I go from there, and then you hit all my checklists. So here you are.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I did want to go back to, so you said that you were not gaining weight and you were not that you were like low on vitamins and stuff. So like
Yeah.
what happened to make you like be, I guess, have a good baseline again?
Yeah. Um, so I laugh because it's kind of like a joke amongst the ALGS community of what parents will do to help their kiddo gain weight. um, and yeah, so basically my parents, anything I would eat, they gave me. Like that was it. Like my older siblings, I know, like we've talked about it now and laugh, but they're like, yeah, if you wanted ice cream, you just got ice cream. Like it was whatever you would eat, they would give you. Um, but yeah, basically, my parents just, I mean, and they had to like track my weight and everything. Like they had a scale at home. They had to like measure how much they were feeding me and things like that. So honestly, it was just, I want to say it was just luck that eventually I did finally start to maintain. My mom still has notebooks though of like tracking my weight, and like there's still some numbers that like jump out at her that she's like, you stayed at that weight for so long. You wouldn't go past it. I was like, sorry, my bad. But like they, like threatened my parents, not like that, but they like with a feeding tube multiple times, and like I almost had to have a feeding tube. One time they did have social services called on them because they tried to accuse my parents of not feeding me, which is like a whole thing. Yeah, so I don't really know how they did it. I know that there's some in the community who their parents went so far as to like they had butter popsicles. Like that's how they got their kid to gain weight. Their child like loved butter. And so they literally would have a butter popsicle, and like that's how they got them to like finally start maintaining.
Oh my God.
Weight. And I was, yeah, like, so that's why I laughed. And you're like, so how'd you do it? And I was like, oh, there's some embarrassing stories. But parents were like, hey, but they're still here and it worked.
So it's basically that your body, like you'll eat, but your body like doesn't like absorb it, I guess, and just like goes through you.
Yeah. So the way I describe it is like, so what your liver is supposed to do is filter out like the good and the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so mine kind of does the opposite, where all of like the nutrients and like fats and things go away, and then because I have less bile ducts, I have more bile in my system. So I was jaundiced when I was born, and I'm technically always jaundiced. You just can't tell as much now. But so I have more bile in my system than a quote unquote healthy person. So basically, all the things that you would keep from food that helps you gain weight that your body would maintain, mine doesn't. It keeps a very small amount compared to what it should. Yeah, that's my like, I don't have a medical degree explanation of how the liver works.
So it kind of like you have a really, really high metabolism.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's a good way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just had to like overcompensate what your body couldn't give you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's basically I have a high fat diet. I mean, that kind of boils it down, like maybe oversimplifies it, but that's basically it. Is I'm on a high fat diet.
You had to eat it for a family of 4 every night.
Yeah, basically. Anything I would eat, like, here, just eat the food.
But like, would you be, so with that being said, would you be like hungrier, or you like had larger meals, or you were just like eating normally and you were forcing yourself to eat more, or?
No, it was like, it's funny. I mean, I had like a normal appetite. Like, it wasn't that I wasn't hungry. It was just that it was just that the food that I was eating, it would seem as if I just wasn't eating. Like, that's what it would seem like if you were to have looked at me, which is why my parents had social services called on them, because it looked like I wasn't being fed, even though like I was eating. Like, my parents joke, and I still joke to this day, like, I eat, like, I really love food, but like, it doesn't stay, which, like, I know for a lot of people sounds great, but yeah, like, I have a normal appetite just like everyone else. It just doesn't.
So are you like fine now, or you still have to eat more?
Yeah, no, I'm fine now. Yeah, like now, my weight is pretty maintained. Yeah, I stay within like a range now without even really like trying to. Unless I like am super stressed out, then I don't like to eat as much. But that's just
That's normal though.
unhealthy coping skills.
Nah, we all got unhealthy coping skills.
Me
You're no
too.
different.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Joey.
Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned you do social work. What
Mm-hmm.
would you think is your biggest challenge for you?
Oh, lack of services in not just in the community that I work in, but I think overall lack of accessible services. So, if I have a family who is dealing with, I don't know, let's say parent has a record and has a felony on their record, and there's not places that will hire them right after they get out of after they're not incarcerated anymore, and there's places that won't hire them, or there's not job training, or whatever. Then there's nothing I can do, right? Like, I can't give them that training. That's not like my job, is to connect them to resources. And if that's not there, if it doesn't exist, then it's really hard to do my job. And it's really disheartening having to look at someone and be like, I hear you, and that is such a valid obstacle that you're facing. There's nothing I can do. Like,
Well, you have
nothing.
families or you have kids or both?
So both. So I work at a preschool that serves low income families. And my caseload is like kind of like the top 20% of our most underserved families. So a lot of my families are homeless, or foster families, or their kiddos might have disabilities, or they're transitional. So they might be in between being homeless, or maybe have just gotten out of jail, things like that. So while our preschool serves the kiddos, right? Like, that's our preschool's number one priority. I focus more on the adults, and provide really intensive support. So for some, they need more emotional support. And so it's weekly phone calls, and it's talking about coping skills or things like that. For some, it's teaching them parenting skills. Because if they grew up in a really unhealthy household, how are they supposed to know how to parent in a healthy way? And so sometimes it's things like that. For some, it's helping them find housing. It's helping them get job training or go back to school, get their high school diploma, things like that. And then also providing support for the teachers who have the kiddos in their class. Because a lot of my kiddos have a lot of emotional needs. And so, like, for example, today I am worn out because I had a kiddo who, I like to say, a lot of big feelings. That's how I describe it to kids, right? So basically, they're feeling lots of things, and they don't know what to do with that, right? It's hard as adults to know what to do when you have lots of emotions. And so today he went from kicking, punching, screaming, lovely words at me, to just needing to be like to have physical touch and just needing to be held, and like walked around the building. So I am incredibly sore from being kicked and punched, and also carrying a 4-year-old who is half my size for like 2 hours today.
It seems like you do so much that it seems almost like out of your pay grade. I feel like you need like a social security guard, you need like a therapist on
Yeah.
call.
Yeah, it's, social work, I feel like, is a very underappreciated job, but I feel the same way about teachers, honestly, and a lot of things I think that serve the general public and serve families that aren't being served. I think people who do those kinds of jobs are very underappreciated and are really doing like 5 or 6 different jobs at once, but getting paid for one. So I don't disagree with you.
No, I mean, it also can change a lot. I'm assuming from state to state.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, so much so, so much so. Mhm.
Yeah, so like I thought about being a therapist, but then I couldn't handle hearing people's problems on a daily basis. Like I'll
Mhm.
hear people problems and I'll be supportive and whatever, but I'll
Mhm.
need have to have space for myself.
Oh
I
yeah.
just I just couldn't do it every single day, but like you are in social work. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's not easy at all. And I'm not going to act like I have it all figured out because I definitely don't. Um, the first thing that I have to do is remind myself that what I do in 8 hours is enough, right? And that it made an impact, and that is worthy of leaving it there, right? Um, that's like kind of the first thing that I have to remind myself. Um, the other thing is remembering that it's not all on me. My caseload's future and all of that is not all on me, right? There are a lot of people in the community who that falls on, as well as that family, right? And so that's another big thing I have to do. And then honestly, just being able to vent to my friends, and without of course sharing any confidential information, but being able to say like, I am so sore from a 4-year-old today, and being able to say that, or being able to vent about the lack of services or things like that. I also go to therapy, so that helps a lot too. Therapists do have therapy. Therapists do have therapists, so that helps a lot too. And really prioritizing and knowing that, I know it's such a cliche, but there's a reason it's a cliche, of like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so like, I used to do that. I used to run myself ragged. I used to take everything home with me. I used to take everyone on my caseload, or everyone that I worked with's problems, and put it on myself. And it was not good. It was super unhealthy and unfair to me. And so I like to learn lessons the hard way sometimes, like all of us do. And so I learned that lesson the hard way. And so, yeah, I very much prioritize like taking care of myself now and trying to leave things at work. Can't always do it, but I do try.
Yeah, like I'll just be like quit and then like scream into my pillow.
there's, I do a lot of yelling. my, my friends will tell you that, yes.
No, it's like huge kudos to you. So, but since you work in a school, so I'm assuming you work with the same kids every single day for a whole semester or the whole year.
Yeah, so it varies. So luckily where I work, we also have family advocates, and so they provide. So there's a family advocate for every single classroom, and so those families. So what they do, they do what I do, but less intensive. So they connect families to resources. If a family needs help applying for food stamps, they'll help them do that. Things like that. So the goal is for people on my caseload to eventually be transitioned off of it and go back to being on a family advocate's caseload. So me getting them to a point where they don't need that intensive support, but also not like cutting them off from support completely.
Mhm.
Yes, I forgot your question while I was doing that.
I forgot too.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're like you do the heavy lifting and then you pass it on when they
Yeah.
have a lighter load.
Yeah, basically, because our family advocates do such an amazing job. But their caseload, my caseload is around 20 to 25, and theirs is up to like 60. So, so the support that I provide is much more intensive. So because my families need that, whereas that's the goal, right? Where they are able to take those families who don't need quite as much intensive support, so they can have a larger caseload to be able to do so. So, oh, I remember your question. It was if I have kiddos or the families for the whole year. Got it. Yeah, so it varies. So for some, I'm gonna be honest. I'll get a referral or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have them for as long as their kiddo is here, and that's not because of that family's fault, but I've had families where, you know, parent just got out of jail and moved in with a partner, and then partner kicked them out, so now they're homeless, and like it's all these different things. And so, right, that's a lot of things to get off that list, right? So we got to get them a home. We need to be stable housing. Let's help them find a job. Let's help them, transition back into being in everyday society and not being incarcerated. And so for those, right, I just kind of know, hey, this is going to take more than a semester. This is going to take, the whole year. And then there's some who maybe it's, I've had someone in my caseload who was homeless, and you were able to get them housing within like 4 months of like working with them and getting things figured out, and was able to transition them off my caseload. And then by the spring, they were back on the family advocates caseload. So it just kind of varies from family to family.
It must be super satisfying to see them like thrive on their own.
Oh yeah, it's really, really special getting to see a family find confidence or find empowerment. And, because a lot of times my families are at the lowest of the low that you can really be, and at the most vulnerable. And it's really hard to trust people or accept help when you're in that space. And it's very understandable. And so it's really, really awesome watching them grow confidence, or watching them achieve things, and being able to see like, oh, this is a thing that's possible. Like this isn't hopeless. Or, for some of my families, they've had really terrible experiences with social services. And hearing the word social worker instantly turns them off, which is very understandable. There are terrible social workers out there. And I'll say that, like, there are social workers who are not there for the families.
Anna is not one of them.
No, I try really hard not to be. But like that's the whole thing too, is sometimes my biggest like achievement that I find is them trusting me. Like if I can build trust with them, I take that. That's a win. Like if I can build trust with them and help them know that I'm truly there on their side and to support them and their kiddo, that just feels amazing.
Did anybody like reach out to you like after they like thrive, like to thank you or like keep in touch with you, or they just fly away and never come back?
Yeah, so there are some who do like fly away, which is totally okay, right? Like I have no hard feelings for that whatsoever. For some, they want to forget that time of their life, or especially right after it happened, and that's okay. No judgment here.
I'm
I do
judging.
have some. Do what?
I'm judging.
And then there are some who that is a step for them. Like for some, it's really hard for them to express gratitude. And so especially for those who that was a whole step, and for them to come back and tell me like, thank you. I actually had someone the other day who this mother was having everything that could possibly go wrong in a day go wrong. And she deals with mental health issues, and her child has some disabilities. And so like anything that could go wrong that day was going wrong. And then she found out from the school that her child had to be quarantined. And very understandable that she was pissed off, like just at the world, and kind of took it out on me. And and kind of snapped for a little bit, and that's fine. I completely understood and was just like, got through the conversation, told her what she needed to know. And it was really funny because then the next day she called back and was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm really sorry. It was a really awful day, blah, blah. And then thanked me and was like, I am so glad that you're our caseworker and like, you're doing such an amazing job. And it was like, well, thanks. Like, that's nice to hear.
I mean, it's just, I mean, especially in your line of work, it's just nice to be like you always give out, but it's also nice to be like thanked too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, I was talking to someone the other day and I was talking about how sometimes it's just nice to feel seen, right? To just not that you have to be like, because I'm not Joey, and you've been at some of the Our Odyssey meetups. I do not like compliments. I don't. I'm working on taking them. So it's, that's not something I want. But sometimes it's just nice to know that people are aware of how much energy and passion and time that you're putting into something.
Well, you're doing a great job in the Our Odyssey world.
Thank you so much for saying that. But yeah, so I think it's nice when that kind of stuff is acknowledged, especially from those that I am working with or trying to help, as well as those that I work with. Being able
I mean, you also form pretty close relationships because you're learning like almost everything about them. So
oh yeah.
So like I know you say like you keep everything at work and stuff, but there's still a small part of you that has developed a emotional relationship and like.
Oh yeah. Like the caring doesn't stop for sure. Like I don't leave that at work. That can't be left at work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's funny. There are kiddos who have had on my caseload who age out of preschool, and I still think about them. I'm like, oh, I hope that kiddo's doing well. Like I bet he is just having a time, or I bet his teacher has learned this about him. So yeah, the caring definitely never goes away ever. It's always there.
I mean, I'm assuming you're doing a great job.
Well, thanks. I do try a lot.
All right, so we're gonna now talk about Our Odyssey. I know you didn't want to talk about it, but we're gonna talk about it anyway.
I hate talking about Our Odyssey. No, all the sarcasm in the world.
So how did you get into our? Well, first let's establish what Our Odyssey is for the audience. So should I? Do you want to say it or should I?
That's up to you. You're the host here.
I'm sure you get tired of talking about it, so I'll do it. So Our Odyssey is a peer-to-peer support group for chronic and rare diseases. They'll host, monthly meetups of just like hang around, talk about whatever they want. A lot of people come in, but hey, I'm dealing with this issue or that issue. Like, let's talk about it, or I need help, or I need support. It's not a therapy session anyway. I don't think any of us are licensed, but it's just a very. But I mean, in the beginning, you always say it is not. We're not skilled at this, but it's just a raw conversation and see if we can all help each other and such. And it's a more intimate relationship that you probably would never have, outside of the group, because everyone kind of knows what you're going through. Mm-hmm. So that you don't have to explain yourself. You just dive into it. So that's great. And yeah, and then they sometimes have a group or some meetups where they talk about a particular topic. So one topic was about pregnancy and I forgot what you call it, the IVF, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I don't know why I was there, but I was there. So that was really cool. I learned a thing or two. That I'll never get pregnant, so. But I guess the technology.
How you know, Joey?
Yeah, the technology is not there yet. So anyway, how did you get into Our Odyssey?
Seth Rotberg. That's how I got into it. Yeah, so Seth was the first young adult that I met with rare disease outside of my specific rare disease community. And honestly, thought we were going to have nothing in common and was like, well, that's fine, I guess. And because our rare disease story is so different, and so I, honestly was just like, we're gonna have nothing in common. Like,
I think that's the same. I had the same thought process too, like joining the rare disease community. But like we're so different. Like why should I join this one? Because
right.
like we have our own diseases. Like why should we mingle? And it's like, and then you like join a meeting and you're like, oh shit, this is awesome.
It's like, what?
And then you're like looking like, when is the next one? Like it like totally changes.
Yes.
And now you're like want to be a part of the rare community and support it and grow.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Basically, was I had a phone call with Seth, and we realized all these things that we had in common. And one of the biggest things was this: we both were experiencing like a lack of resources, specifically for young adults with rare, in rare. And I thought it was just in my specific rare disease community. He thought the same in his.
Yeah,
and
after you're 18 years old, like there's like nothing for you.
there's nothing, right? Like, or even before then, like there's nothing for like, hey, you're about to leave high school, and what do you do now? Like,
Yeah, you have no idea.
like you have no idea. And there's like nothing, there wasn't at the time anything to help with that. And so yeah, and so we connected over that and a lot of other things. And that was really how it started. That's how Our Odyssey. Seth had a conversation with another young adult, Whitney Carter, who is another amazing advocate.
Yeah. Seth Rodberger is the co-founder of Our Odyssey,
yes.
right?
Yes, yeah. So Seth is the co-founder, and so that's really where Our Odyssey kind of started. Was just an idea and like seeing this lack of resources and seeing this huge need. And yeah, my joke is that I just didn't stop bothering Seth after that. So I told Seth basically they were throwing around the idea of starting an organization, and I basically was like, cool, tell me how I can help. Like, just sign me up for any way that I can make this happen, because I need this resource for myself. And that's kind of where it started. So I started like as a volunteer, I guess, but I wasn't called a volunteer. I just pestered Seth a lot and gave him my opinion on things when he asked, and also when he didn't. And then I think I was on like the leader. We had a leadership committee at some point. I was on that, and then I was the board secretary, and then we got enough funding to pay a part-time person, and that's when I moved off of the board into a part-time paid position, basically doing what I was already doing, but taking off a board hat and getting compensated for some of that time. Yeah, make that money. But yeah, so that's how I got here today with Our Odyssey.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure you're a great, huge help for Seth and Our Odyssey and growing it to what it is today.
I mean, I'd like to think so. I would like to think that they wouldn't keep me around if I wasn't helpful.
No, I mean, it's just great, especially for me to like, it helped me. Our Odyssey helped me a lot to like, well, for one, to like mature as a person, and two, to be more comfortable advocating for myself. Like they're just like to see others advocating themselves well and like doing a message, and them they having their own successes. And then also the support is really cool too, because like it's harder to find support in the non-rare communities for like people to care about you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's like definitely like cool, and it definitely helped me a lot to like pursue my podcasting career. Like I don't think I would have started a podcast at all without Odyssey even existed. So I think thankful for that. And then, doing my YouTube videos that I do, and it's like it helped me so much, just like be more confident in myself.
Oh, so that's awesome. But that's why we exist. Like that's why Our Odyssey was created. And it's just, I don't know, it blows my mind still when I hear young adults like yourself tell me things like that, because it's just like, oh, we're like doing the thing we set out to do. That's that's like so cool.
Yeah, so thank you to Anna and to Seth and whoever works behind the scenes. I mean, I know a couple of them, but I'm not going to mention all their names, but you know who they are.
They do. All of our volunteers and our awesome board are
Yeah.
just, yeah, incredible, incredible.
Yeah. So like, I'm sure you do way more under the hood than we will ever know. What do you think is the biggest challenge you guys are facing? And you can't say your coworker is Seth.
Darn, no, I'm just kidding. It's definitely not Seth. Yeah, I think, I joke that our Odyssey, if you study nonprofits and like starting a nonprofit and things like that, we kind of started and things kind of went flip flop of how they normally do, right? So a lot of times if you start a nonprofit,
Wait, were you there in the beginning when he co-founded it, or you came later?
So I was there. I wasn't as active then, because I couldn't be because of my job. But I was there, so I was kind of like advising and jumping in. The first stuff that I started helping out with was the programming. So the programs that you all see, I was a very active part of, because that's what my last full-time job was programming and building programs, for all ages. And so, yeah, so in the very beginning, I was there. I just wasn't like, didn't have a title or anything. But yeah, so, oh, I forgot your question again. Joey, the brain fog is real.
What do you, the
Oh,
biggest challenge you're
biggest challenge.
facing? That's
Got it.
not Seth.
Not Seth. Yeah, so I think our biggest challenge is, yeah, I was saying how we flip-flopped it. So a lot of times I feel like nonprofits are like, you identify your reason, your mission, right, of what you want to do. You seek out funding, to be able to do what you're wanting to do. You build the programs or whatever, right? And then, the next thing is getting it out there and trying to find those that you're going to be serving. And that's like kind of the step. So we had no problem finding the people to serve. It was kind of the opposite, where we suddenly, and then after, we have a huge demand, huge demand for what we do. But we're just like 2 years old. So, with that comes capacity, right? So I'm only part-time and I'm the only paid staff member. So right now our biggest challenge, honestly, is fulfilling the need. Like, we're at capacity. We can't build any new programs right now. It's a great problem. Like, I joke that it's the best problem, right? That people need what we're doing, and we are doing it, right? Like, those who come to our programs are benefiting from them. And so I think our biggest challenge right now is capacity. Is having the manpower and the time to do even more so, because what we're doing already, is we're hitting, the top of what we can do. So I would say that's our biggest challenge right now.
So are you saying you kind of need more funding to hire more people to help?
Yeah. So I think it's more, we need more, there's a word for that, but at the end of the day, we're in need of more consistent funding. I'll put it that way. More consistent, reliable funding, to where we could either have someone be full-time or hire someone else to be part-time, that kind of a deal, which, I mean, honestly, that's every nonprofit, right? We all need more money. So, yeah. But yeah.
You guys are sponsored?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some of our programs are sponsored by some really, really amazing organizations, which is why, like, I don't like to say we don't have enough money, because, like, we're able to do the things we're doing. But yeah, so we do have some amazing sponsors, and we do have some really awesome funding, some awesome funders, that are incredibly supportive, and, like, not only of like our mission in our organization, but those of us who are doing it, which is really, really great, because I don't think that's super common when it comes to funding, of like having that relationship with those that believe in your mission and actually want to like hear about what we're doing, which is just super cool.
Yeah, I mean, just from an outsider perspective of not rare diseases, it doesn't seem to be like an important charity to like gather rare disease people, but especially to me, it helps a lot. And I would hate for an organization like Our Odyssey to like shut its doors because of funding, because I think it doesn't help a lot of people, but it does help a small group, and I think it's important to have that community because
Yeah. And
we
I
all
think,
need that support.
yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is even if it's number wise compared to like all these, to giant corporations or giant nonprofits, those that we serve still matter, right? And I think that's the other really big piece of our Odyssey is just amplifying the voices and needs of young adults because it needs to be taken seriously, and that's another big piece of what we do. It's why I get on podcasts and share the young adult perspective. It's why we connect young adults like you and others to share their story, because people have heard my story a lot, and so knowing that there's so many different young adult stories that need to be heard, because what we're doing matters and young adult needs matter. And so, yeah, I completely agree. Completely.
You gotta sell like a sexy magazine, a sexy calendar, and have like Seth in a like a fireman suit or something. Sell like sell like hotcakes.
I'm gonna table that idea and applaud the creativity.
Yeah, there you go. They put him. They do all 12 pictures of Seth and different. I don't know, doctor, fireman.
Oh my goodness, Joey.
EMT.
Stop.
I don't know. And I'm just throwing ideas out there. So Seth, if you're listening,
I'll let you pitch that idea to the board. How about that?
Sure. And I'll probably not get invited again, but it'll be worth it. So before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say or promote or anything?
Oh man. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
Yeah.
It's my first video podcast interview. I've never done that before. And
Welcome to 2021.
Right? Eventually I got there. It took me a little
I feel like some people like to see people talk instead of just listening.
Oh, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, it's funny because I watch like video podcasts, but yet I haven't been on one, which is just funny.
Oh, okay. I'm your first. Okay.
Yeah. You slid into my DMs and you were.
And you gotta have to send me pictures later for the thumbnail.
Pictures of our programming. Yes, that's what it's gonna be. But yeah, so no, I think just like thank you for having me on here. This has been really fun. I think it's the first podcast also where a lot of different parts of my story I got to share all at once, which is just really great. Yeah, I think other than that, watch the rest of Joey's videos. Check out Our Odyssey.
No, you don't promote me. Promote yourself. This is all
I'm
about
not
you.
good at that. Okay, you can follow me on social media. I am at Lil Anna Laurent. That is Lil Anna and then Lauren with a T. That's how I tell you.
I'll put all her links in the description below, and I put I put like so like you don't see it now, but there could be your name under your face. So.
Oh no, that's
so they'll
great.
see you. So.
But yeah, so you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm very active on those. I like to describe myself as trauma-informed sarcasm and an advocate. So that's the wide variety of content that you'll be seeing from me. I'm also a super obnoxious aunt, so you'll get to also see my adorable nieces and nephews that are the cutest humans in the world.
She's awesome. Even if you're not have a rare disease as such, she's an entertaining individual, and support her. She deserves it, and compliment her, even if she doesn't want to be complimented.
Thank you, Joey. I'm learning that I need to learn how to promote myself better. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I did like to be roasted, and then that's how I feel validated.
See, I'm really good at doing that for myself, though. I don't need help roasting myself. Like, it's all going on inside all the time.
Ooh, I get pretty ruthless, but like, I can't be ruthless out of the gate, Yeah. I want you to think I'm a nice person, and then you can change your mind.
and then the claws come out?
Yeah, so like, after I establish myself that like, I'm not crazy,
You have to
but
hide.
It is terrible for me to explain my whole mantra to the world.
I mean, you just did it, so now everybody knows.
I'm gonna cut all of this out, so I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank Anna for coming on and telling meaning that her favorite animal is a goat / Tom Brady. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.